And we're back, and we have Colleen with the Maryhill Museum. And I wanted to ask you about the loops. The loops that, because we were talking about roads, and that Sam Hill was very instrumental in a lot of the roads that we still travel the same paths today. But the loops, the significance of those.
Sam Hill wanted to build a highway through the Columbia Gorge. And he was lobbying both states. He was talking to a lot of different people to do it. And a lot of people really thought it couldn't happen because of Shell Rock Mountain, which is just outside of Hood River today. It still has quite a lot of rockfall. The gorge has a lot of rockfall. And so people were thinking it just couldn't happen. So he'd been studying roads for quite some time, actually. He'd gone to Europe to study roads. He took pictures. He had this encyclopedia collection that the museum still has today of roads all over Europe, of curbs and asphalts and macadam surfaces, and you name it, he had it. Bridges and curves and turns and tunnels. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things he decided to do, he decided that since the United States government wasn't really delving into road research like it should, and nobody else was really going to do it, he was going to build some experimental roads on his property. And these roads, the whole goal behind the roads were to not only show that things could be done, and they could be done in the Columbia River Gorge, but they could be done to a high level, an artistic level, if you want to think about it that way, mm-hmm. And that they could be done in a reasonable way. And then the other piece is that these same roads would, of course, help get the farmers to the markets, send the markets and the city folks to the country, because it would connect the Goldendale farming community with the railroad down on the river.
He had a vested interest
He had a vested interest in doing all of this. So he set about designing and building these roads, and he brought out Samuel Lancaster and a man named Major Bowlby, who wasn't really a major, it's a long story, and they set about building these roads. And what they really did on the Maryhill loops was create a design criteria, a certain radius. They had to go up a grade. The cars of the day could only go up so fast or so high before they would need an additional water source. So they planned for all of this and switchbacks to allow the cars to gradually climb the top. They did a lot of dry rock wall retaining work. Mm-hmm. And all of that stuff, all of that beautiful work they did there was then taken to the Columbia Gorge Scenic Highway, where it was incorporated there. And then it was taken by all of the people who learned from them out to the nation, and a lot of our national park roads are inspired by these early roads, Sam Hill and Lancaster and Bowlby and the others.
So it was almost a training ground.
It was almost a training ground, that's exactly it. So they did, there's like 7 miles of experimental asphalt that they did in sections. They wrote all of this up. It was in the National Road Builder magazine. It was in National Geographic, actually, I think in 1911. And so all of this stuff was pretty exciting. Mm-hmm. And he built these roads, and that made it possible, really, for these other roads to come along.
Very cool stuff. I mean,
this
guy, there's so much about him. I mean, from Stonehenge and all of these other things that he's done. We could have a show specifically on him. Mm-hmm. But tying back into Maryhill Museum, when did the mansion actually become a museum?
He went to San Francisco. He went for the Pan Pacific Exposition, and there he met a woman by the name of Laloe Fuller, who was very, very famous in her day for these wild dances she would do to fantastic music, sometimes some of the most contemporary composers of the day. And she created these very artistic effects with color and light. And she was down there with her troupe of ladies, and he met her through a friend. And for some reason, she came up with him in 1917. Now, Loie was one of those people that was always interested in getting people involved in her various projects. And one of her projects was to create a museum in Paris. So she began to talk to Hill about this museum in Paris. I mean, she even wrote him letters like, that he had to understand, he loved concrete, that he had to understand that museums in Paris didn't build in concrete, they built in brick and stone. And they're very funny letters, but in the end, it was the museum on the Columbia Gorge that was the successful dream of Loie's and then of Sam's. And by 1918, by 1920, they were writing up their ideas and desires for this museum. By 1923, they had incorporated the museum. By 1926, they had dedicated the museum with Queen Marie of Romania. So, so that dream started to happen fast when she saw the place in 1917.
And she said something that, and I'm probably going to murder it here, but it was something like, when she was dedicating, a dream is built today. Or I'm sure
well,
you know.
Queen Marie, when she was there, she said to the surrounding mass of people, and I understand there were a couple of thousand or better people there. She said, "There's a dream built into this place, a dream for today and for tomorrow."
Yeah, isn't that? Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful.
It's a beautiful, beautiful expression, because that's really what Sam Hill and Loie really wanted Maryhill to be, was something for everybody, for the people of their day and for the people of future generations.
And it's living on.
It certainly is. It's 70 years, strong.
Yeah, I love it. And then Sam Hill died around the 1930s or something?
1931.
Okay, okay.
He died in 1931. The property had been sold to the museum itself, the corporation, for $1. Because you have to, I understand, you have to have some kind of real exchange when property trades hands. So the property had been sold actually for $1 to the corporation, and so it belonged to the museum. And Sam Hill died in 31, and it took nearly 7 years for his estate to settle. And so for any remaining monies and funds, he'd left the museum to become available so that the museum could start moving forward with finishing this ranch house as a museum. So that took they got all of that in 1938, and it took another 2 years for the museum to get renovated and completely ready to go.
Wow. Well, I want to talk to you. I know we could go on and on and on. There's so many things about that place, and obviously I have a bit of a passion for it myself, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the grounds and also the 7 decades of decadence or something like that it's called. So we'll be right back on Localite. Don't go anywhere.